Hello, you're listening to the Inside Elland Road podcast with me, Joe Donoghue, and YEP chief football writer Graham Smith. What's been happening in the world of Leeds United? Well, the club are through to the fourth round of the FA Cup, where they'll play Millwall next month. It's Sheffield Wednesday this weekend at Elland Road. Joe Gelhardt and Charlie Crew have both gone out on loan. No signings have been made thus far, although injury to Pascal Struijk could just move the needle on that one. And finally, I was told I look like Chief Executive Angus Kinnear by a Twitter user this week. Which of those pieces of information is your favourite, Graham?
Oh wow! That interaction this week lit up my life in a big way. You know that whole "there's nothing to smile about in my life." Well, there was when I was able to come across a post on X that accused you of essentially being Angus Kinnear and looking like him.
I did enjoy that some people came to my defense in saying that, no, I don't think he's necessarily enjoying shutting down transfer rumours. I also don't think he looks like Angus. Again, that's not a slight towards Angus at all. I just like to point out that I am a little bit younger than he is.
Both good-looking lads in their own right.
You know what? Each to their own. Let's just enjoy them, man. You know, why have we got to pick one or the other? No, I did also enjoy that because for some reason those responses to me shutting down a transfer rumor, they didn't come up in my replies. So I was very, very reliant on you sharing them into every possible group chat that we're in to make sure it got as many eyes on as possible, and then tweeting a screenshot of it yourself. Yeah, I mean, on the other topics that's been sort of happening since we last recorded last week, should we start with the FA Cup? Just get that done and dusted out of the way. It's very much in the fashion that Leeds did dispatch of Harrogate. It wasn't a classic. It was one of the many forgettable FA Cup third round matches that will have been played over the years, but they got the job done, and that's all they had to do.
Yeah, they ticked that box. Weren't particularly convincing. However, they scored a goal and hit the woodwork twice. Had other chances to score, restricted Harrogate to very little, as they should have done. I quite liked Harrogate's performance, I have to say. I thought they were plucky. I thought they actually showed a little bit more, particularly in the second half, than some other teams have come into Elland Road this season. A little bit of an attacking endeavour. They went for it, some set pieces, chances to deliver. Leeds stood up to it pretty well, and yeah, got the job done and got out of there without slipping over on the banana skin and making an arse of themselves. And they booked themselves a glamour tie at home to Millwall in the next round, so we can all really, really look forward to that. It'll be a thriller, I'm sure. But onwards, I think it's important this season, the FA Cup. I think Leeds' involvement in it is important because players who aren't getting that many minutes can get some and can maybe come into rhythm, or it'll be another chance, for Joseph against Millwall, I would presume, to get himself a goal if he hasn't got one by then, and confidence for other players too. So also, Farke having a look at Manor Solomon in the 10, it's not that consequential because it was only League Two strugglers he was playing against, but just a little chance to experiment here and there for Farke, and of course Giavogi got his first start as well, didn't he? So yeah, some boxes ticked, but onwards and upwards.
Yeah, onwards then. Today we had Daniel Farke's press conference at Thorpe Arch. You were there, of course, asking him all manner of questions. What did you make of the sort of the headlines? I mean, obviously the big one being Pascal Struijk being out for 3 weeks, but potentially longer if the hamstring injury that he's sustained, when they do a rescan, if that shows up that it's involved the tendon. Now, I'm not a physiotherapist, I'm not a doctor, I don't know the severity of that, but if the muscle and the tendon is affected, that sounds worse than just the muscle being affected, right?
Yeah, I would imagine so. It sounds worse. I don't see how it could be better having the tendon involved as well. Oh, don't worry, it's also his tendon. He'll be fine. Not good. And as Farke himself pointed out, it didn't need to be pointed out to him. You've been here before with Pascal with a seemingly innocuous injury, and a couple of weeks prognosis, and then all of a sudden he didn't play again last season. He picked up that injury at the turn of the year, and then he was just out. It was groin, wasn't it, last year, and surgery, and that was a blow for Leeds, because although you can say it's all right, we've got Ampadu, and then Gruev can slot into midfield, I think you lose something without Struijk there. I think his passing is really important for the left side in particular, and getting Leeds going in the build-up. I think that he deals with the ball incredibly well. Yes, Ampadu, very, very good on the ball as well. Different strengths on the ball. I like having them both on the pitch. I like having Struijk in the defence and Ampadu in the midfield. And I definitely think it's not as good for Leeds to have Ampadu at centre-back and Gruev in midfield. So, if it is 3 months, they absolutely need to act, I think, and strengthen at centre-back, because while you can talk about Ampadu and you can talk about Max Wober, Wober hasn't got any rhythm going at all this season, has he? We've just not seen him when we have.
You can't rely on him from a physical perspective, can you? That's not his fault. It's just, his knee isn't letting him have that rhythm. So you can't rely on him as a left-sided centre-back for the rest of this season. So it opens up that possibility. And I did think that Farke spoke quite openly. He used the word transparent. He wasn't pulling any punches, or he wasn't trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes when he was saying that, look, if Pascal's injury is more severe than we hope it is, then yes, we'll probably look at bringing in a centre-half, was essentially what he said. So he is very much on the same page as us there when it comes to Max Wober, and just the reliability that he's gonna be. He's not going to be the guy who stands in for Struijk if he is out for an extended period, simply because his body might not let him.
Yeah, and it kind of exacerbates the whole club versus fan base almost narrative that's going on here, between a club that says it's staying awake for possibilities in the January transfer window and a fan base that says go and get players now because you might need them, or you're going to need them, or we need them. It makes me think a little bit of me now and again on a Saturday morning when the kids are eager to get up and get tucked into some pain au chocolat or whatever they might have for a Saturday morning breakfast. It's not enough for me just to say, okay, I'm awake. I've got to get up. I've got to get the oven on. I've got to get the pain au chocolat in there, because it's just not enough to be awake. And I think I fully understand and would probably echo some of the concerns that we're hearing at the minute from fans. The Struijk thing just makes it that little bit more urgent. I do think that Leeds could win this league with this squad as it is. That's definitely a possibility. They've got here with this squad, and they probably should be more points clear than they are. They deserve to be more points clear than they are. It's the what ifs that worry me. I'm a great big terrible pessimist, Joe, and I just think of things that could go wrong. And if on February the 6th, Joel Peru reports something that turns out to be nasty and he's out for a couple of months, that for me is a big, big issue. If Brendan Aronson, the little indestructible honey badger that he is, if he was to break down, you're in trouble. You don't have another natural 10 without taking away from another position, without being a bit more experimental. I don't see why you would settle for being experimental when there's a league title here for the winning. Like, it is literally here for the winning. Leeds have it in their hand right now, so it's down to them to keep it.
Well, it's what people have been saying, isn't it? This championship is Leeds' to lose, essentially, because while yes, it looks as though Sheffield United are going to be making signings, Burnley have made signings and could potentially make more. Sunderland are being pretty aggressive in the transfer market this month. Yes, while all those things are happening, Leeds' squad is still the strongest. It might be the thinnest, but it's also the strongest. And the performances have been. I have sympathy with Farke when he keeps having to, say, and responding indirectly to fans that this squad got us to the top of the championship. I also have sympathy with fans who are saying just get the job done, like sign some players, because then it's beyond doubt, which is completely fair. There's credence to both arguments. I suppose that kind of takes us on to our thoughts on the window. I replied to somebody online this week with a sort of, I tried to summarize it into like 280 characters. It was, if you say we expect a quiet window and then you end up doing business, even if it's signing one player, you look pretty good, because you haven't raised expectations. If you say yes, we're going to try and sign some players, and then you don't get them over the line, you don't look as clever, you don't look as competent, and you get people who will then throw the rash and misjudged suggestions that they don't know what they're doing, they're not qualified at their jobs and that sort of thing, when realistically there's just a lot of things, moving parts at play. That I published something earlier this week as well, which was sort of a long-winded explainer of why deals tend to happen in the last 2 weeks of the window, which is what we're entering now. The deadline is February the 3rd, so we're in pretty much the last fortnight, depending on when you're listening to this. So, I mean, if they are going to do business, the strike issue aside, because they'll find out the severity of Strike's injury probably next week, when it's when I imagine that the reason they're going to have to rescan it is because there might be some swelling or something. I don't know.
There's fluid.
That's it. Yeah, fluid. Once they find that out, that issue aside, I have lost my train of thought. So I can't remember where I was going with that. Which is really useful.
As well.
It was a really good point. I've got it now. Rediscovered it. Almost like you could say rediscovering it, just stumbling across it again, like Daniel Farke and Emi Buendia lifting a third championship title, perhaps. Those types of players, Emi Buendias. Ultimately, it might come down to the final week of the window where Villa have just signed Daniel Malen, who is going to compete for the positions which Emi Buendia is going to play at Villa, or rather not play, because he's played like 60 minutes of Premier League football this season. It might come down to the final week where he goes to his agent and says, look, you know what, Leeds, a promotion challenge, it might not be the worst idea in the world. Yes, I was reluctant to drop into the Championship again. I think I'm above that, but ultimately it might be for the sake of 3-4 months. It's a possibility, and ultimately only not until that happens, not until that decision changes in the player's mind, will a deal like that be made possible. Because you can't force him to go on loan to Leeds, for example, from Aston Villa, if he's content to fight for his place this week. But then next week he might think, you know what, I just want to play football.
Yeah, I know that there'll be Leeds fans that rage against this, but I actually think Daniel Farke's personality is very well suited to Leeds United, the football club, because he is not a man to panic. He's not a man to he's not prone to irrationality or being overly emotional. So he's not going to be hammering on the recruitment team's door and saying, get me a player. He is going to be content to wait until the better opportunities arise. We saw that in the summer. That was the whole ethos of the summer, that they kept saying the players that we want aren't yet available, and so why would we go and get a player that other teams in the Championship could get when we could wait? And of course, you have to then have on-field success to prove that your strategy was right. You have to get players in the end. In January, it's a little bit different because Farke doesn't believe they have to come out of this window with more players. But it means he's not panicking. It means that nobody's able to put the squeeze on Leeds and say, well, you're going to have to pay a loan fee of $1 billion to get this player, because Leeds don't have an air of desperation about them. They look like a team very much in control of their own fate. They're top of their division. They've got a manager who keeps continually saying he's happy with his squad. And so you're not going to have them over a barrel. I think that players will potentially become available in the last week or so. And then we'll see how awake Leeds have been and how in the conversation they've been and how quickly they can act. And it is a test to be able to get business done in those moments and make sure that no one comes in and gets your player. Make sure that yours is the best deal on the table. Make sure the player and his party are convinced. And then there's all the other elements as well that Farke is not going to have a player on whom he's not convinced when it comes to character. Like, he has to be 1,000,000% convinced that this player is not going to upset the apple cart. He talked about it today a little bit. That's why I asked him, have you seen it before? You know, where bad eggs have come in and given off a stench, and left everyone retching and gagging for the rest of the season.
Come on. People might be listening to this before, like, while they're making their tea or something. Come on.
While they're having eggs for dinner.
Stop it. Behave.
Yeah, so I do think his kind of, would you call it stubbornness, or just unwavering kind of, this is my stance, I am not panicking.
I'd
He's very
go
resolute.
resolute, yeah. Self-assurance is what I'd
Yeah,
say.
he's very, very resolute. He's not gonna bend like a flag in the wind, as he likes to say now and again. And we'll see if that's the right tactic, you know, because ultimately it might seem like a good thing to me right now that Farke's not panicking. That can seem all fair and good. But then if middle of the way through February, you know, those injuries that we talked about earlier happen, or other injuries happen, and suddenly you're short and you struggle and you stumble and you end up in the playoffs, so you don't go up, then you don't look so clever anymore. And people will say, and people will, this will be the stick that is used to beat Leeds for years if it comes to disaster. So there's an awful lot riding on this. You know, they've got to be absolutely, completely convinced that what they're doing is the right thing. But as it stands, we know that Farke likes Buendia. We know that he will go for a player who's a difference maker, you know, who actually improves the squad. The argument you can make to the squad as well, if you sign a player who is every bit as good or better than what you've already got, the argument's so much easier to make. You know, you can't really have a delegation from the dressing room coming and saying, why are you signing this player when, you know, when Brendan's been flying and scoring goals? If you can say, well, this guy is going to come up with this many assists, this many goals, he makes us better. Players like playing with good players as well. You know, the players will welcome quality in the window. So let's see if they can get some.
If I had to ask you the question, how many pain au chocolats do you think Leeds need to sign between now and the end of the window? That is actually that will have been the activation phrase for anyone who maybe tuned out for the last couple of minutes. You know, if they tuned out while you were talking about being awake and going to make pain au chocolats in the morning, they'll be thinking, what on earth is he going on about? They've lost it. But yeah, how many players do you think Leeds could end the window with, if realistically, and also how many do you think they should end the window with?
I think they will end the window with one addition.
Mm-hmm.
I think something will happen in the last week. I think they should get 2 or 3, but no more than that. I think any more than that, and it's too many. Because the other side of the coin is the injuries don't happen, and suddenly you've got lots of players, some of whom can't even get on the bench, very good players as well, and then you do have an unhappy camp, and your apple cart, your apfel carton is upset, and the apples go everywhere, and your horse tramples all over them, and then it's just mush. Nobody wins a title with mush. So yeah, I would say if they got 2, right, I'd say, all right, thumbs up, fair enough. Let's go into the crunch time period, as Daniel calls it, and just simply win the league by 10 points and no fewer. Because it, like we said, it's there. Just go and win it by. Don't win it by 1 point. Don't have us go down to the South Coast in some jeopardy on the final day. Let's go down there with the cushion of 10 to 15 points, and let's everyone get absolutely sloshed.
How good was it when Click was breakdancing on the pitch? You know, how do you not want to recreate that environment on the final day?
One of the greatest things I've seen, I think. Not that he was particularly good. I mean, he's far better than I am. I don't think I've ever been able to do what he did. But I'm not saying that you know, he wouldn't rival, what's her name? Raygun? Is that her name?
The Australian Olympian.
But it was more the context. It was the context of where he was, who it was against. They'd clearly been celebrating. solidly prior to that game, and it was just a great day for the club. But the fans weren't there. Wouldn't it be amazing if this fan base was to go and have an actual party with a game with no jeopardy on it, just simply to go and celebrate with their team at the end of this season? And I think it's possible. I really do. But this month, it just feels it's not crucial. It's potentially crucial, and it's the what ifs that scare me.
Yeah, we're in danger of sort of getting a little bit ahead of ourselves there, because there are 20 games still to be played, and hopefully no more in league competition. Because I'm not sure I can do the playoffs again. I'm not sure that Leeds fans can go through another unsuccessful playoff campaign. But yeah, elsewhere, or rather other things that were discussed in Farke's press conference today, he was talking about the transfer situation. Obviously, we've touched on that Leeds might enter the window depending on how severe Pascal Struijk's injury is. He says that he's been in daily conversations with Adam Underwood and Alex Davis, who are obviously part of the, heading up the scouting and recruitment department at the moment. And obviously speaking regularly with Nick Hammond, the transfers consultant. But possibly more revealing than all of that was that he was on the phone to Parag Marathi. I keep getting his name wrong. Is Parag Marath?
Marathi.
Yeah. It's one of those things you just can never make it stick in my head. Parag Marathi.
Say it again.
He was on the phone to the chairman, was Daniel Farke, after the last game, and also Pete Lowy, one of the members of the directors on the board. He was texting Daniel Farke as well, which obviously got me thinking. What do you think they were discussing on the phone, Parag and Farke, and what do you think was Peter Lowy's opening gambit via text? Do you think he goes in as one of those people who texts in a very email, professional, business-like sense? Or is he?
Not.
I hope not. And I kind of see that. I can see both ways. The type of I can see Lowy being this type of person who would, just, dive straight in. This is exactly.
Good eye, mate.
I was avoiding it. I was trying to avoid doing it. Of course, you just went straight in there. He'd probably respect that. I was kind of trying to tiptoe around the issue, but yeah, I can see both. What do you think was discussed?
When he was on the phone to Parag, he said they were talking about what they want to do in the short, mid, and long term. I find
that's all of the things. That's just things that you want to do.
I find that interesting because I was trying to link it to the Harrogate game and thinking, well, what's the relevance? Or is it simply just you've got the FA Cup out the way, now let's talk about what we need to do here, and is there anything you need to do here, and where are we with stuff? I imagine January is very much a hot topic. I imagine they're discussing targets who could be potentially available and where they might need to strengthen. Maybe as well, because the Harrogate game was a chance to look at a couple of players in certain positions. Maybe that just focused the minds on a couple of things. Maybe the 10 position, maybe the 9 position. I don't know. But yeah, it just sounded like they chatted about everything, really. I mean, short term, you want to probably strengthen a little bit this month. You want to stay top of the league. Mid-term, you want to win the league. Long term, you want to be in the Premier League, surviving, and then pushing on. We know all of that. But yeah, I was definitely more intrigued by the text from Pete Lowy. Did it begin with what you up to, or something like that? And the fact that he's going to be at training as well, just popping in. I was kind of glad I asked that question of Farke, because obviously it's in the context of they're playing Sheffield Wednesday this weekend. Sheffield Wednesday have a melodrama akin to any of Australia's finest soap operas at the minute. I mean, it's just incredible. Chansiri saying that he and Danny Rule haven't spoken since December. It's up to Danny Rule to come and talk to him if he wants to talk about transfers, because he's the employee. Absolutely incredible. the kind of thing that if you're there as a journalist, as our colleague Alex Miller was, that you've partly got your head in your hands because it's 5 hours long and you've no idea how you're even going to begin to encapsulate it with a written piece, but also you're thinking, this is gold, just pure gold. The relationship was obviously broken down between Chansiri and his manager. It just does seem to contrast starkly with what Farke has got at the minute, and he certainly paints a very rosy picture. And he's even got, you know, billionaire directors texting him to say, I'll see you tomorrow at training. There just doesn't seem to be that kind of level of support around Danny Rowe. And, you know, we can talk as much as we like about the transfer tension in the summer and what that meant. And people kind of maybe drew inferences from Greta moving upstairs, or I don't know to say upstairs. He moved kind of adjacent to Leeds United, didn't he? Still very much with an eye on Leeds United, but now working for the 49ers wider network. But he was in this week as well at Thorpe Arch, and Daniel Farke said they saw him. He's been at every game, I think, that I've seen recently, Greta. So he's obviously still very much involved in Leeds United. And that kind of that answer Farke gave me did paint a picture of like a support network. You know, he's got the owner ringing him up. He's got directors getting in touch. He's having daily meetings. It's not like he's in a vacuum thinking, are they doing anything? Do we have any money? Like, he should know exactly the scenario when it comes to any target or any position. So you would like to think that'll put them in a position to strike if they decide that the opportunity is there.
Yeah, I think you're right. It does sound, in contrast to this weekend's opponents, pretty harmonious. You've used the term dolphins and fairy cakes and rainbows and whatever else to describe. What that's not the phrase. What have you said? Dolphins, something, and rainbows.
Dolphins and rainbows.
Dolphins and rainbows. Yeah, to describe when things are quite rosy. It's anything but at Sheffield Wednesday. I kind of have to respect just the sheer gall of the man. When Chansiri's like, you know what, I'm the boss. My employee has to come and talk to me. You know, I'm not going to go to him and say, here, would you like to spend some money? Like, I mean, with all due respect, I mean, football's a different animal. It's a completely different business. It's a law unto itself. So yeah, it's interesting. Well, it's crazy that he's just in a room full of probably the most passionate Sheffield Wednesday fans, and he's decided to rile them beyond belief. It's brave. It's very, very brave.
But we've seen it before, you know, that
yeah.
The whole Darren Moore thing and the lengthy statements that Chansiri will put out on the website, you know, putting his point across, and
that he'll write himself.
That he appears to very much just dictate word for word. And you know, I read in Alex's piece that Chansiri was being advised by those around him at the top table to not say any more on certain instances. And then they had the Shea Charles debacle where, you know, you had another journalist in the room reporting, I'm hearing that Shea Charles is staying at Sheffield Wednesday for the second half of the season. I mean, for context, he's been one of their best players on loan from Southampton. Terrific player, you know, big future in the game. Northern Irish.
What's his nationality?
And then 9 minutes
Northern
later,
Irish for anyone who missed that.
9 minutes later, Chansiri comes back into the room and tells the room Southampton have just recalled Shea Charles.
I described it sort of internally in our internal like company messaging message board. I said it must have felt like the Scott's Tots episode of the US Office when Michael Scott tells all those kids that he's not going to pay for their college tuition. That is genuinely something that you would see in the British office as well. You can just imagine, you know, David Brent walking back into the room and going, actually, you are going to lose your job. Actually, Shea Charles has been recalled. Like,
yeah.
Can you imagine that at Leeds? Manor Solomon's playing very well right now, and if he was as important to Leeds as Shea Charles has been to Wednesday, can you imagine that? You know, at a fans forum at Elland Road, Parag walks out of the room, takes a phone call, walks back in, and goes, "Yeah, Manor's going back to Spurs."
Yeah. Yeah, incredible scenes, really. And yeah, stark contrast. Well, we absolutely shouldn't speak as if it's going to have any impact on the team that comes to play Leeds or anything, but it just paints a picture, doesn't it, of what you don't really want when your team is in with a chance of promotion,
Mm.
or in the picture. You don't want stuff being derailed, and yeah, it'll be fascinating to see if Rule sticks it out there, and if he and Chancery manage to get on the same page. You just don't imagine they'll be able to get onto the same page to the same extent that Farka seems to be with the 49ers right now. If there's one of those scenarios you'd ever like to pick, it wouldn't be the one at Hillsborough.
No. They are 4 points off the playoff spots at the moment, Sheffield Wednesday, and in pretty decent form as well. They've won 2, drawn 2, lost 1 in the last 5. And rightly so, but like Farker mentioned in his pre-match press conference, last season they were battling against relegation. Danny Role basically, I don't want to say single-handedly, but he did have a very considerable influence on getting them up the table and away from the bottom 3. This year, they're not in a relegation scrap, which for the squad that they have, I think is quite good. And they're scoring goals as well. I mean, they got 2 against Millwall in the last league game. They scored 4 against Derby County. They got 3 past Middlesbrough recently. 2 against Stoke, 3 against Oxford. They are a threat. They do have a decent attack, even if the personnel aren't as standout as Leeds. So yeah, Leeds will have to be. Again, it's a cliche of Farkas, but they will have to be at their best this weekend.
And they're scoring goals from distances hitherto unseen. I mean,
Yeah,
you've got Barry Bannon, who beat Brendan Aronson to the Goal of the Month award. Aronson was nominated for that team goal at Derby for good reason, because it was a phenomenal team goal. But team goals just don't cut it when people are lobbing keepers from 35 yards or whatever. And Barry Bannon managed to do that again against Derby, I think. And then what a
have
week?
Have you just broken an embargo?
Don't think so.
I don't think so. No, I immediately went and checked the emails to make sure that you hadn't, but
and have I?
it was definitely a possibility.
But
There doesn't seem to be any embargo on it, so I think you're in the
no
clear.
embargo on it. We're all clear. And then just a week or two after that, Josh Windass looks up inside his own area, decides he doesn't want to risk sprinting on his hamstring that feels tight, so he just pings one from well inside his own area and puts it in the back of the net. They have players who can do like the unexpected, and they're big and strong and physical, defending as well, and they'll be organised and well drilled. And I'm not expecting to see anything too different in terms of what's the word? Defensive determination than we've seen from everyone else. I don't think they're going to come and go toe to toe. I think they'll probably try and hit Leeds on the break or from set pieces or whatever. But it'll be difficult. It's a difficult game, this one.
Yeah, Leeds will have Joel Piroux back, which earlier in the season we might have been saying we might have just merely shrugged, but he's scoring goals. He is definitely the first choice striker at the moment, and obviously having been rested for the game against Harrogate, it's done him a world of good because the muscular issues that he was having have subsided, and yeah, he's going to be fine. That's a big boost, isn't it?
Yes, it is. This debate still exists, doesn't it? He hasn't shown himself to be a 90-minute player this season, but he's shown himself to be an incredible finisher. And we keep talking about it, and it just isn't going away. This whole notion that a lot of people have that Leeds play better with Mateo Joseph in the attack, but Mateo Joseph isn't scoring goals. So that whole conundrum it isn't going away. There doesn't seem to be a ready solution to it. And you can understand why Farka will almost definitely put Piroux straight back into the lineup, because he is scoring goals, and he isn't really a player who goes through droughts, is he? He doesn't ever really go too many games without a goal. He's proven he's done it in this division a lot of times now, not just for Leeds, for Swansea as well. And I would expect him to come straight back in.
Yeah, I would as well. I think that's probably the easiest decision that Farker has at the moment. If Joseph had scored a hat-trick against Harrogate and put up a really good performance, then there's definitely an argument for him to stay in the team. But on the basis of him not having scored anywhere nearly enough recently for that to be considered, then I think, yeah, Piroe has to come in. He's got 10 goals and 5 assists this season, Joel Piroe, at just over the halfway point to have contributed directly to 15 goals, and you're on course for just under 30. I mean, that's exactly what you need. You need someone in a promotion-winning team, in a title-winning team, to lead the standings like that. And then in reserve, you've got Dan James with how many goals has he got now? 3 and like 6 assists or something. I know he's 6 goals and 3 assists. Aronson 7 goals. Solomon's got 4 assists and 3 goals. Really starting to come into his own now. It's looking good as long as they stay fit. Just going back onto Matteo Joseph, though, you spoke this week to 2 former lead strikers. You wanted to speak to others, but they refused to return your calls because they see Graham Smith pop up on their phone and they just immediately red button. But Brian Dean and Lee Chapman were kind enough to give you a little bit of their time, and they had some very interesting things to say about Matteo and his current form. The struggles that he's having. Their experience as a young striker and how ultimately you get out of that slump.
Yeah, I thought what Brian Dean said was particularly good advice about how he would watch videos of himself a lot and the good things that he did, scoring goals or whatever it was, being involved in goals, and really reinforce positives, like the whole power of thinking, I did that, I did all those things, I can do that again. And building into a performance right from the warm-up, making sure that everything you do is right. Your first pass is right, your first touch is right, and just setting yourself up, building stepping stones to set yourself up to score a goal. Lee Chapman talked about he was a bit more rudimentary. His advice was basically just extra finishing drills, and the coach can help and put an arm around him. And but in amongst all of that, Lee Chapman really was in no mood to sugarcoat it. And his thought is that Matteo Joseph needs to be prolific now. Because I asked him, there are cases of strikers who they'll maybe score a couple this season, they'll maybe score 5, 10 the next season, and then they're off and running. They almost build their way into prolific form. That didn't really hold much weight with him. He was saying if he was 17, 18, you give him more time, but he's 21 now. And some Leeds fans thought that was harsh because of Matteo Joseph's age and where he is in his career. But also, Lee Chapman scored 200 career goals, something like that, and scored a lot of goals at the top level, not just in the second tier. So he does know his onions. There's an onus on Matteo Joseph to show a little bit more between now and the end of the season, that he can put the ball in the back of the net. But we've seen him be prolific and really rifle away chances like snapshots and poaching. We've seen poaching instinct from him, most notably recently for Spain under-21s. And I know it's a different level and I know there's a gulf, but finishing is finishing. If the ball bounces to you 10 yards out, whether it's a championship defender stood next to you or an under-21 defender stood next to you, if you're just simply wrapping your foot around the ball and guiding it into the net, then that's a skill that surely can be replicated no matter the level. I wonder if it's become more of a head issue with him, because you can see how badly he wants to score a goal and the anguish almost that's building whenever he misses a chance. When he hit the post against Harrogate, he did so well. He did so well to create that chance for himself, and he is very good at that, picking up the ball, running at defence, maybe a step over to create a little bit of space, or he shifts it slightly to the right or the left to give himself a yard, and he gets a strike away. And it's almost always a pretty decent strike. And that one was, and he was really unlucky to see it come back off the post. If one of those goes in, he might be off and running with the goals. And then he's added that last bit that we're all waiting for him to add, because the rest of it, I think we both agree, is fine. The rest of his play is fine. He's doing good things other than goal scoring. He just needs one to go in. But it looks to me like he personally needs it so badly right now. And the frustration and the impatience and the disappointment, or whatever it is, we've seen him be quite emotional in the past. And I can imagine that right now he's just desperate to put the ball in the back of the net.
It will be a massive let off of steam when it does happen. And I've got faith that it will happen soon enough. You know, he's missed a lot of big chances. His XG per 90 is the third highest in the team. He is someone who's getting in the right positions. That is absolutely without a doubt. And another thing, it's probably more specific than necessary in this discussion, but in terms of his shots, he's hitting the corners, and that's exactly what you need to be doing as a striker. Yes, he's been very unlucky because, you know, there's been some very good saves, or, you know, they've just been off target. He's hitting the corners though, and ultimately those finishes will come good. And if it is a head issue, and it comes down to, you know, he just gets the one and then he's, you know, he's on a roll, there is that possibility. There's also the fact that I was having this conversation with you earlier in the week, wasn't I, about what Lee Chapman had to say, and I maybe wasn't having it as much as you were having it. You know, call that maybe old school versus new school. But I think, you know, having watched a lot of like young players, form is so much more volatile when you're a young player and you don't have that experience. You don't have you don't have the experience that Chapman is talking about to fall back on in your own mind to say, look, you know what, I went through bad patches before. I'm going to come through this one again. This is the first time that Joseph has been scrutinized in his career, realistically, regardless of what his age is. This is the first time that he's been actually scrutinized for his level of performance. So naturally, you know, there might be an element of you know, reading into it too much, or, you know, doubting yourself a little bit. But ultimately, when those goals come, and I do think they will, then yeah, it'll be spot on. But yeah, he has to stay fit as well, though, because yeah, the prospect of, if Joel Piroe gets injured, you can't be leading the line and not fancying yourself to go, you know, to score 1v1. Joel Piroe does every time he goes through 1v1. That's his USP, isn't it? You know, you'd put your house on him scoring those chances, because it just seems like water off a duck's back to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll just have to see. I think, yes, Bamford's injured and cannot be relied upon, but I still think that those three are good enough to get you promoted. I can see the attraction and the temptation of bringing in another striker, but again, it's January. It's going to be difficult. You're going to have to bring in a player who's not been playing regularly, not got rhythm, maybe isn't at the required fitness level to play that pressing forward role that you know, Farke certainly likes from Joseph. Yeah, it's a difficult job. I think if you were going to prioritize any position to bring in, it would be number 10.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a half, actually. Yeah.
10 and a centre half. And if an absolutely unbelievable fullback came up, then maybe. But as for a 9, it's just the whole Bamford fitness thing that just makes me a bit queasy. It wouldn't hold any truck with me that Leeds should have been in for Tom Cannon, who played largely like a cannon against Leeds for Stoke. Like Stoke had put an actual cannon on the pitch and just rolled it into Leeds players time and time again, because all he did in that game was leave one late on a couple of players. You know, he didn't impress in that game. He didn't suggest that he was better than what they've got. He's got 9 goals. 4 of those were against Portsmouth in one game. I think a couple were penalties as well, maybe. Mm-hmm. The thing of it is, Leeds don't really need a big target man right now, I would say. Whereas Sheffield United know that Kiefer Moore needs groin surgery and he's going to be out. So they need someone to kind of do that job for them. But I don't think he would have been the answer for Leeds at all right now. It just doesn't look like the player they need to me. And I would completely agree that a 10 would be the priority, because of all those little positions they get into where just the final pass has just been a bit lacking, or maybe a really crafted shot from 25 yards. Which brings me on to this week's newsletter, which
Oh
was
yes, I was just about to say that as well. Yeah,
just
nice little
guided it
plug.
into the top corner there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for the newsletter this week, I talked about goals and shots from distance because Daniel Farke, after Hull, after Ao Tanaka sent that absolutely gorgeous shot into the back of the net, Daniel Farke said, we're going to need more goals from midfield and goals from distance if we're going to get where we want to be or get what we want to achieve this season. So I kind of wanted to look at that a little bit, and just find out what the picture is in terms of shots from distance, how shot shy or trigger happy Leeds are in comparison with others. And I have to say, I was a little bit surprised by how often they have shot from distance. Without giving away the entire newsletter, they rank top for shots from outside the box this season in the Championship by a distance, by like 24, 26 shots from second place Burnley. And you've got some players like Dan James just tries it on all the time. You know, he's always having shots from distance. Joel Pirou's only had 12 though. I wonder how much more success they might have if they're letting their top finisher, their best finisher, have a crack from 20 yards, 25 yards. Willie Gnonto has had more shots blocked at Leeds than any other player this season. Brendan Aaronson's put more wide or over than any other player. Those things kind of stack up. I think teams are very wary of Gnonto's shot from in and around the edge of the box because they know he's got a real cannon on him. I don't mean a Tom cannon. And Aronson, we know, has a tendency to blaze over when he gets in such good positions. You know, his late arrivals in the area, his third man runs and all that are giving him great chances. So for him, accuracy is the key. For Gnonto, maybe space is the key for him, finding space to shoot or finding a teammate because he's closely marked. Or maybe they need to get the ball to Peru. But I don't know. Like Leeds have already scored 4, right? 4 goals from 150 shots from outside the area. Leicester last season didn't lead the league in this, and I don't think Ipswich were in the top 3 for goals from distance. I don't think it's something that's going to stop Leeds, the fact that they haven't scored that many from distance, but it would be nice against those teams that form one giant glob of humanity in front of the area if someone could just bend the ball around them into the top corner now and again.
It would be useful. It's also great for journalists going to matches who want to be entertained, like that Tanaka goal, like Bamford's at Peterborough. Yeah, that does add a little bit of colour to the many long trips that you end up having to do. Yeah, I mean, I'm very much in favour of Leeds scoring more goals like Ao Tanaka's at Hull. I just don't think it needs to have. I don't think it needs to be a big issue. You know, they've taken 433 shots in 26 games this season. This is going to test my maths. That is 33 minus plus 26. 33 plus 26. What's that? 59. Yeah. That's 59 shots more than the second most in the Championship. The team with the second most in the Championship this season. That's a lot.
Yeah, and they've scored more goals than anyone. And
their XG is the highest.
Yeah, they're right up there for almost all the metrics that you'd want. Right up at the top.
Conversion rate has improved as well.
Yeah,
as the season's gone on.
And something else I noticed is that sometimes when they are in position to shoot, they have successfully sensed that a pass was a better option and created a goal from a much closer position, much easier shooting position, closer to goal. So that is a very good trait for an attacker to have, knowing when not to just blast one from miles out, but actually there's a pass on here because Jadon Bogle's made a great run in or Aronson's made a great run in. Yeah, I'm not sure it's a massive issue, but it was definitely interesting to take a look at it. I would just love Tanaka to score. I'm not saying every week a goal like that. I'd say every other week if he could score a goal like that.
I'm saying every week. In fact, you know what? New Year's resolution for Ao Tanaka: score more goals like Josh Windass every week. In fact, score a goal against a Josh Windass Sheffield Wednesday team this weekend like that. You know, it would probably have to be if, you know, it was 0-0 and Sheffield Wednesday get a corner in the last minute and they send up the goalkeeper, and then Tanaka gets it on the edge of Leeds' penalty area after it's been cleared, and he just clips it and it just trundles into the net. I think that's probably the only time that we'd ever get Tanaka attempting a shot from his own half. But come on, we know that it's possible. We know that you've got that technique.
Yeah.
Yeah, do the thing, Al. What do you think the final 2 weeks, just back onto transfers, what do you think the final 2 weeks of January are going to look like if you had to take it sort of a few days at a time? So from the 18th to the 21st, the 21st to the 24th, etc., and so on until February the 3rd.
I think it's going to look like nothing's happening. And then all of a sudden, I think something might happen. But not many things. And honestly, I also wouldn't be astounded if nothing happened. If Leeds looked like a duck, right, just sailing along on the top of the table with their legs kicking like Billy-O underneath them, but you can't see that. And then the deadline comes and they just continue to sail along like a duck. I could see that.
Okay. Do you think Daniel Farker would take kindly to that analogy? That his team are a duck.
I'm not saying they're a sitting duck. Ducks
No,
are
no,
lovely.
no. I mean, I think he would. I think he'd probably, like, you know how he does come up with these Farkisms, you know, like the flag in the wind. I think we really need to get him to change that, or at least just once to throw in, instead of, you know, bending like a flag in the wind. I really want to hear him in his accent say human palm tree. Like, if you don't bend like a human palm tree, that would be fantastic. That would make my season.
Yeah.
But no, I think he'd appreciate that. It is a good analogy because the legs are kicking underneath. I feel like every transfer window, it's prudent to labour the point to people, and not all fans, because, you know, I think a lot of people do understand that stuff does go on behind the scenes, but there are others who they need to see it happening to believe that it's going on. I
That's
feel
because
like
they've been burned. They've been burned in the past.
well, yeah, exactly, and it's not to discredit their or you know, invalidate their feelings. But it does bear mentioning, like, the recruitment team haven't downed tools. They're not sunning themselves on sun lounges in the Middle East at, I don't know, one of those nondescript holiday destinations that you see on Instagram influencers feeds. They're not there. They're not doing that. They are in North Yorkshire. They're sitting in offices. They're having conversations in, you know, hotel lobbies and stuff like that. That is going on. It's just that you're waiting for the right deal. Yeah. Speaking of the right deal, there was that link to a player in Portugal over the past week, or rather on one of the days this week, which we were able to sort of shut down pretty quickly. That's very unfortunate, given that on the last podcast I did say that I kind of had word that Leeds were looking at a player in Portugal who wasn't Portuguese, and then all of a sudden a player who isn't Portuguese but is playing in Portugal comes onto the radar. That was not the player that I was referencing. And yeah, we spoke to people and had it sort of confirmed that is not a player that Leeds aren't that Leeds are looking at, and it didn't make sense either, did it? He was a defensive midfielder, Jay Davila.
If there was a single position where Leeds United do not need a player right now, it's in defensive midfield.
Yeah, there has been a link this week, or rather towards the end of this week, on the forums, shall we say, to Fabian Rieder, who, and again, that's going to be another, just in case anyone's tuned out, I bet that's pricked some ears up. Again, not gonna, didn't want to sort of write on it, because again, he is somebody who can play as a number 10, and I'm very cautious to shut things down this early in the window because things can change. But as far as what we were hearing, there's nothing in that at this point in time, which, you know, will be disappointing to some people. But I think, given that, having had conversations with people who are a lot more clued up on German football than I am, it sounds as though He's on loan at Stuttgart at the moment, but he's not been starting as much as he'd like because of a young bolter in the Stuttgart squad, Leveling, and that's been rather unexpected. So they've got a big squad over there, and I think he just wants to play football. If he returns to his parent club, Rennes, I don't think he's going to play there either. So again, would it make sense to maybe what would you call? You know, when Leeds are sort of I don't want to say used, but sort of it's
They are
very
used.
useful. Well, yeah, but useful to sort of drop a name in because you know that you're going to get traction on it from a sort of a fan perspective. Yeah, no. So that's one which didn't ring any bells to say yes, it's happening. You know, man the flight trackers. Which I mean, do you think there'll be any flight tracking towards the end of the window? It's a nice, it's a lovely little bit of modern day transfer window discourse, isn't it?
I mean, by the time the plane left Birmingham Airport, you know, it'd almost be touching down again before you even realised. Yeah, maybe
that M6 traffic is absolutely terrible at that time of night. So you know, I could completely sympathise if they did want to send a private jet.
Yeah, like we said though, don't expect it. Like, don't expect something. Hope for something by all means, but hope with discipline. You know, don't let hope become expectation, because unless the only thing I can see being a certainty is Leeds jumping if Strike's out for months. That in that instance, I see them definitely doing a bit of business.
Yeah. What type of centre half would you bring in if Strike is injured for 3 months? For it, let's say, for example, what type of centre half do you bring in?
Probably
describe him. Describe him like you were building him as a player in, I don't know, Championship Manager.
Okay. Big legs, left-sided, can pass a ball, very comfortable with the ball at his feet, dangerous at set pieces, safe for his own set pieces, probably an air of mystery about him, maybe like a lone wolf, like a quiet sort of lone wolf, an array of tattoos, probably. That's what I'd want.
So that was a nice game of describe Pascal Struijk and what he means to you.
Well, this is the thing. Whoever they get, it's not like they could just go and get a kick it and head it merchant, can they? And I know those are, you know, at Premier League and Championship level, they're probably fewer and far between. But it has to be a player with a bit about him on the ball. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. Otherwise, you might as well just play Ampadu there, because if he's going to play in the Leeds team, he has to be able to handle getting the ball from Millier and contributing to the build-up.
Would you take Lloyd Kelly from Newcastle on loan?
I don't know anything about him.
Left-sided.
I know that Fenerbahce are like the look of him, but their opening offer was derisory. I know that Newcastle are more than happy to probably get rid of him, which maybe tells you something. Yeah, I don't know enough to say. What's he like?
Well, I don't know him personally.
As a footballer.
Yeah, I could see him playing Championship football.
Damning with faint praise.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Predictions for this weekend.
Yeah.
Leeds United, Sheffield Wednesday.
Okay. I'm going to say Leeds United 1, Sheffield Wednesday 0.
Interesting. I'm going to say there's more goals than that. 2-1 to Leeds.
Okay.
And that's that, by the sounds of it. Yeah, we'll have to pick back up next week and see what the football gods had for us on Sunday afternoon. Nice 12 o'clock early kickoff. Yeah, when are we? We'll probably record next week's after the Norwich game, won't we? In midweek.
Yes, we probably will.
Probably hear from us again next Thursday, or maybe Friday, maybe then, because the Burnley game is on the Monday night, isn't it? So that would probably make sense. that the press conference would be next Friday as well. So yeah, we're hearing from us in a week's time, and another week of the January window will have come and gone. It's very possible that Leeds won't have signed anyone, but I think, as Graham was saying, the most enlightening aspect of whether Leeds will do business or not will be will ultimately be whether Pascal Struijk's hamstring tendon is involved in the injury, and whether the scan shows that up. So we fingers crossed for signings, but also fingers crossed for just 3 weeks out for Pascal, I think is fair to say.
Correct.
Right. Well, that's everything from us on the Inside Elland Road pod this week. Speak to you soon. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.